podcasts are about the audience, and the audience does matter. You want to try to build that over time, but not everybody's going to be a Joe Rogan type. That's not most of us. No, we're not going to be able to do that. But what podcasting is in creating that content, it has multiple ways of being valuable.
Cash Miller, the founder of an award-winning and Inc. 5000 digital marketing agency, Titan Digital.
Currently the CEO of Titan Media Worx,
a done-for-you podcast production and guest booking service.
If you're doing interviews, bringing on guest people, I consider it the best form of networking I've ever seen. We've made connections that's led to business, had guests on that have become clients. Being guests on a different podcast is also valuable. You get content that you can use with your audience. I ask questions as if I had walked up to you at one of those booths and I was interested in investing, because the audience that we're building for that, they are looking for those opportunities. In the digital marketing realm, people have a tendency to beat stuff to death. And that's what they've done with blogs. That's what they're doing it with AI. And that's going to be a problem. Now, everybody thinks that podcasts are
the Content Capitalist Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast. Today I've got a guest with me. And I swear, some people have such cool names that, like, it's kind of like a license plate, you know, like people pay so much for the best license plate. But this guy was like, he's got a name, Cash Miller. Like, it really sounds like he's a rapper, or like he changed his name at some point to become cooler on Hollywood, but he was born with it. Cash, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. I love, thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Awesome. So, Cash, I'm really interested in what you're doing because, number one, we serve people who need to bring in new leads and they need to get their marketing lined up, but you do it in a slightly different way. And we just had a conversation how you've exited your agency business and now you're going all in with podcast marketing or podcast production. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually, it's an interesting story because podcasts, the reason I got into it was using that kind of content, for lead generation for the agency. That's how it actually started, is sort of this like R&D side project to see if we could generate leads, through the podcasting itself that we started doing. And we got good at production, over time. And so, that's where it began for us.
So I want to break this into like two chunks in our talk here, because I think that the people listening, we have like 7,000 people who are mostly going to be business owners, and they're going to be really interested to hear about you having exited this business or your previous business, because I think a lot of us, we're in the weeds all the time. We're in a thick forest. There's not much light that comes through. We're tripping over vines and getting stuck, and there's thorns and all kinds of, scary animals. You came out the other side and there's sunlight. I hopefully, could you tell us like if we put that 12-year grueling or maybe peaceful and enjoyable journey through the forest and having exited, could you kind of give us an overview of that?
Well, it's the grilling,
Grueling. Okay. So I'm not the only one. Sometimes that feels like I'm walking through a dark forest.
No, it's funny because now I'm on the other side of it, and I've been spending the last few days I'm wrapping things up, winding it down, and and you just you look back at some of it, because it started as the agency started with just me. I learned SEO. I started learning in 2007. I'm an Army vet. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff, and I didn't want to stay in the military. So I had started studying SEO, and just because I wanted to know more about how to do business online at the time. And eventually that was my exit strategy, was, okay, I will, start an agency, did it myself. And over the, next 12 years, we built up to over 500 clients. We had 30 employees, but no business is, easy to grow. And digital marketing can be very challenging because there's so many people that enter the field and everything. And there's so many, it's a constantly changing landscape. And for me, eventually I got kind of burned out on doing it. It was just not, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur except for my time in the military. And I'm a big believer, I love being a business owner. What I realized was, the transition for me was I didn't like the digital marketing, running that type of business anymore. And that was something that I think for any business owner, I said, if I stopped, I told myself a long time ago, if I stopped enjoying what I'm doing, that's when I know I'm, I need to stop doing it and find something else.
But how do you know the difference between like, hey, I'm just having a slump and I need to, get back on my feet, or like it's time to get out? Because like in 12 years, like I'm pretty sure that there were times like in year 1, year 5, year 10, where you're like, I'm not enjoying this. So like at what point did you make that solid decision? Like, I'm not enjoying this to the level that I'm ready to exit. Like, how do you know the difference? Because we all have those, those things, right?
Yeah. So I had this blow up with this, team member, and it was all one-sided. Trust me, it was just me losing my temper. Because, it was just that frustration. It was just that, one more thing I've got to deal with, and I don't want, and I shouldn't have to, but, I knew that was like that moment. And, me and my, company president, we take a walk and stuff, but I just flat out, I told him, I'm like, I'm done, like, I'm not even running a bunch of the day-to-day affairs. I'd handed off a bunch of the responsibility already, but I still didn't want to do it. That was the thing, it's like, I wanted, to be able to do new things and not be tied to the business anymore. And I also knew that if I sold, that's like, I had been working over a decade. That's my payday, because employees don't realize how much sacrifice is made by the owners. They just think the owners are all making money hand over fist, and that's not the case. Sometimes it is. You could be Elon Musk and, something, but there's not, most of us are not that. So
nobody works as hard as Elon Musk. Nobody works as hard as he does. Like, I swear.
Yeah. I don't know if it's worth, that $50 billion, stock option deal he got, but he's been in court over, but still, like, that's the thing, and what I knew is if I, sold the agency, if I finally got out, which I never thought I would, but now for me, it's the best decision, I could have made, because it's unlocked other possibilities. Like I say, part of it was I needed to do, know what I was going to do after. And that's why we've gotten into podcast production and stuff, but also there's other pursuits that I'm going, to be able to go after they're not marketing related or digital or anything, but they are businesses.
Knowing what you know now, if you could do it again, rewind 12 years, what would you do differently?
I think, well, a couple of things. Because of the cost in the United States, I think I would have started building a team outside of the States sooner. When we got started, it's common practice now. But when we got started, it wasn't as much. It was done, but it wasn't done at the level it is now.
This is like the year 2000 you're talking about?
Yeah, for me, it's 2011 when I started. So
2011.
Yeah, 2011. And
12 years. Sorry, I was thinking 22 years for some reason.
Oh my God. No.
So you already had like a 4-hour work week had come out by then, right? And that whole concept was like kind of
that's good in theory. In practice, it doesn't seem to go that
well, just
way.
the idea of outsourcing to overseas, like that started getting popular around the time, right?
Yeah, it started to get popular, but it didn't have the tools, that you have now.
No, Zoom wasn't what it is today at all.
That's exactly it. Wasn't. Yeah, now, because, the outsourcing side it's remote work. Who cares where they're at? It's, as long as, one of the things I learned about that though, and it's the reason, even with the production stuff that we do now, we've still got, teammates in Costa Rica, because one of the challenges for any of that is the time zones, language barriers and stuff, how well they know English. Those are all, things that can cause a lot of frustration. So we've always, when we started going that route, we focused on high English skills. I say the time zone mattered. So I researched countries that we could really, work effectively, through. And, so it's made a big difference, and it's something we're continuing to pursue even with these new ventures.
Do you think you would have exited sooner if you could do it again?
Yeah.
What do you think that would have been?
I think
the time frame.
I think I should have, I thought about it, but I really should have done it like a year or two ago. Not 5 or 6 or anything, but definitely a year or two ago. I think I should have done it a little bit earlier, but I'm still happy I did it.
I heard something repeatedly by someone who I follow on social media, and Alex Hormozy. I read all his books, but what he says is like everything you do, like whether it's, your first 100 sales, whether it's your first million, whether it's hiring your first team, it's not about the direct result of what you do, but it's about the person you became as a result of doing it. Like now you're the person who's done 100 sales. You're the person who's run a digital media agency and exited. And if you do it again, and I think you'll agree with me, the next one, you'll do it faster. It'll be more profitable and there'll be less pain going through it because you've done it. You are the person that's done it. It's not like that, there is cash value, people pay you money to buy your business, but that's not as valuable as the person you've become as a result. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think, I'm a big believer in personal growth, and that comes in a lot of forms. I'm a avid business book reader, but I don't read. I've stopped reading all the management books and marketing and stuff like that. I read mostly business histories because I want to see how other businesses handled themselves regardless of industry, and also in like this next.
Any favorites you can share with me?
I love Shoe Dog. Nike's.
Oh wow, yes.
Nike's story is one of my favorites. There's so many of them that are out there. I've read 3 different books on Netflix, and the best one is still by Mark Randolph. He's nobody realizes it, but he's one of the co-founders of Netflix and its original CEO.
Wow.
And he exited in 2004 or something. It's like so there are just there's so many good books out there, and I love listening to the podcast by Wondery, Business Wars. They've got unbelievable stories, and they basically they start with books, and then but what they do is they make it sound like you're it's like a murder mystery podcast, but they took a business story and did it with it. So they're fascinating. You see Blockbuster and Netflix at each other, and Walmart and Target, all sorts of different stories, and they go back until even the 1800s. So it's really cool. But I'm a believer in that you learn, from as many sources as possible, and then I think as a person and as a business owner, entrepreneur, CEO, whatever it is, you should be looking for the next evolution. So now, the thing that I know is in this next chapter, I don't want to run the day-to-day affairs. I will be involved, but right out the gate, I don't want to run the day-to-day.
Who's your first hire then?
Actually, with the podcast company, we've already hired. There's already like 10 of us. No, it's 12 actually. So because it was birthed in the digital marketing agency, when we sold it off, there were certain people that weren't going to go with the group to the new company that was buying it, because it was merged into another existing agency. So there was some overlap, some people they weren't going to need, and there were some people I really liked, so I kept some of them. And so I'm funding that, and being able to build it up. But each one of those was specific people in specific areas. So there's already somebody on the sales side, the operations side, like experienced people. And this time I took on some partners, so that I'm the majority, but I have other people with a vested interest in seeing it succeed. And the people that I'm dealing with, I've known for a long time. So I know I trust them, and I can work effectively with them.
Okay. I love that. While we're going through this, a couple of questions came up through my mind as somebody who's also transitioned from one business to another. And I think that, hearing more of what you say, we have more in common than I had originally anticipated. Like we have, like my last business, my last business was an events business. And when I exited that business, where we're doing events for thousands of people, it's personal development, right? And I kept just the part of my team that was the creatives team that was creating the videos that drove the sales for our events. So we would create, marketing videos. We'd, run advertising campaigns, sell thousands and thousands of seats. And that's how we filled the room. And I hated the management part of all that. But when I exited, I just kept the creative team, the video guys. And I said, let's start helping people fill rooms all over the world through video marketing. Now, the medium is the same, video, but our target market has changed a bit, and we don't necessarily just do events. We do mostly like brand building and authority building with video. But that transition, was actually successful because I got to focus on just a part of the business that I love. The rest of it, God, I hated the management and all the the thousands of people. And I'm pinched in the middle from speakers with huge egos and customers with, there's always something going to go wrong, right? And I'm trying to run this business, and it was not fun. It was no fun at all. But that was my transition. So yeah, if that was kind of similar. And now, like you, we're realizing that podcasting is a really efficient form of content creation with video, right? So we're going all in on that too. So this is, I think that, what GMTA, great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I hope we're not just, rubbing each other's backs here with compliments.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's like great. And like, it's funny because, you say you kept a part of the team, and when I decided to sell, it was an asset sale. So I kept the actual legal corporation. I even kept my office, because I'm going to fill it out again. So I went and I found my own buyer. Is the thing.
So what was actually sold? The systems, the client base,
the systems, part of the team. Yeah, they all went to work in another office. We kept.
That was the company.
Yeah,
but you kept the building, the office, and some
that's
of the same
exactly
team
it.
members.
Yeah, I kept some of them.
So basically, I sell my business. Hey, you guys, you out, but you're still there.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, we ended up. Some people went to the new owner. Some went on to just new positions. We gave them plenty of warning, that because they weren't going to be needed on either side. But then I had handpicked a few people that I knew they would need to successfully operate what they were taking on, but I wanted them, and so we ended up. I think it was like 5 people that transitioned over, and we had already had a team together of like 5 or so. So we ended up, I think it was like 5 or 6 we already had. So we transitioned because what we needed to do is then flesh it out with the like those final pieces to the puzzle and such. And then it's like, okay, now because we already had clients and stuff, we didn't just start from scratch. This thing had already we separated it off as a business back in October. So it already had its legs, now we just got to get it to, walk and run and everything, but that's what we started with. And then so far it's worked out really good.
Totally makes sense. And how long did that exit process take?
I don't do things really slow. Like I take time to make the decision, but once I do, I managed to exit it. I found the buyer within, like I say, I didn't use a broker. I found the buyer. Brokers told me 6 months. I found the buyer in like 10 days. And
what'd you do? You just go like ring up every other digital agency in the city?
So it's funny. I actually had 2 offers within that 10 days. One was an agency that I knew would make, had been interested in purchasing it, us for a few years. And then another one that had a former employee. And so, which somebody that we had left on really good terms, she'd worked for me for a long time. So I reached out and I said, hey, I know you guys are investing, you think your new boss would be interested in buying. And sure enough, he was. And that's who I ended up selling to because it was a better fit. I felt the culture and everything, the people, they were a better fit for the clientele. And I leveraged one offer to get a better one out of him. So, but, and then the entire, hey, here's the LOI to, close. It was like 60 days.
Wow. 60 days. That's fast. That tells me that you had some good systems in place, like all the SOPs lined up, people trained.
Yeah. And we worked really hard during that period. I didn't want it dragging out. And I had gone through, had been the buyer. So I knew, where I'd bought an agency and I'd actually pulled it off, when I was the purchaser in about 60 days too. And,
yeah, I've heard of audits taking 6 months just by themselves.
My systems, I am a big believer that if you own a business, you should understand your books. Mm-hmm. Okay. So my books were already lined up prior and had been for years with how much was subscription revenue, how much was project revenue, how much was per industry. I already had the breakdown. So when they had to put together like a pro forma of this is how our company to get their own loan, this is how the company would operate if we took their operation and combined it with ours. I had the breakdown. I was able to give him the whole everything he needed, out of my books in like a day, because I'd done that work prior. Okay. Otherwise, it would have taken me forever to like fix it and come up with the numbers he wanted. But I set it up that way, knowing that one day that's how I needed to look at the business. That's how other people would evaluate it too.
There's a book on the shelf behind me called Built to Sell. And I think that you should have been the case study that the whole that the whole book was written on. You did a great job. That's amazing. And that also kind of encourages me to go back and make things a bit more like as if I'm about to sell it. It's interesting story.
Yeah.
I have this coffee grinder at home, a coffee roaster, it's beautiful, but I decided to cut back on coffee. So I'm not drinking so much anymore. My brother-in-law is just like, hey, I noticed that you're not drinking coffee anymore. Can I have the coffee roaster? I'm like, sure. And here's the thing. I've been using that for a long time and, it works. It looks great. But I never spent so much time cleaning it and polishing it as if when I'm going to give it to him. and this just came to me because this is just yesterday. And now it's shiny and beautiful. I'm just like, and why didn't I do that when I was using it? I think the business owners, not you, but everybody else is like they only shine and polish their business when they got to exit, but when they're in it, it's just like they work it like a dog,
Well, that's the thing is the same things you should know, right? Like any buyer, you should treat your business as if you were going to be the acquirer. That if you were to buy your business, what would you want to see as a potential purchaser? And I just, I had decided years ago, we use QuickBooks and I'd broken everything down. I assigned, all the services to different categories and everything. And because I needed to know what was profitable, was it hosting?
Yeah.
Was it SEO? So when it came time that he would ask, okay, how much is, SEO, how much is like pay-per-click management and stuff, I was able to tell him, the breakdown, and I could go further and say, because we did a lot of business with like independent insurance agencies and hardware stores and stuff, I could tell him where the categories were. And then when he asked, okay, which ones would you pursue if you were, the buyer now, I'd say these are the industries I'd go after, and this is why, so, I think business owners, I tell people my CPA loves me. Okay. Because when I show up with my books, there's nothing for them to fix. They just need to do my taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. I want to pivot a bit into the content creation part of things and how that works in marketing. This is the Content Capitalist podcast. Most of my listeners and, most of us are interested in how is it profitable for business owners, professional business owners, to be investing so much money, so much time in creating content. And I've come to the belief that there are as many ways to make money or to increase your income with content as there are people successfully doing it. We've interviewed over 70 people who are doing at least $1 million a year off the back of content one way or another. I want to hear your unique spin. Like, what have you seen works from like someone signs up, they're like, I'm going to do a podcast, which is what we're doing right now. We're just talking to each other, but somehow it's going to turn to money. And that's why businesses invest in it, right? Like business, it would be a bad decision for business to spend money on something that doesn't have a return. Can you walk me through how podcasts are profitable for yourself and for your clients?
So podcasts it's one of the reasons once I saw podcasting and we had started doing our own production, we got into it with our first show. Everybody thinks that podcasts are about the audience, and the audience does matter. Okay. You want to try to build that over time, but not everybody's going to be a Joe Rogan type or anything and build up these, especially some of these celebrities in their podcasts now. Jason Bateman and a group just, sold the rights or something to, it was freaking Sirius XM for like $100 million for a 3-year contract. Okay.
Wow.
That's not most of us. We're not going to be able to do that. But what podcasting is in creating that content, it has multiple ways of being valuable. One is if you're doing interviews, if you're, bringing on guest people, I consider it the best form of networking I've ever seen. In the stuff that we've done, we've made connections that have led to business had guests on that have become clients. You know, that's the thing about it is, like I give you an example. You know, let's say you were a moving company. Why would a moving company need a podcast? Can you think of it?
Sure. I can think of a few reasons.
Okay, so what do you think?
Well, number one, if you address the questions that are on people's minds when they're about to move, then people will see you as the authority.
Yeah, sure.
I could keep going with a couple others, but
Okay.
You must have something where you're leading toward.
Yeah. So think if you're the owner of a moving company and you're just, you're a local operator, right? How many people would actually listen to that podcast? Now, if you partner with somebody local, you can build your brand. So think of that a lot of stuff in the United States, cities have Facebook pages and things. Like I'm in a place called Murfreesboro. There's a murfreesboro.com Facebook page, and it's got a big following. Okay. So you create the podcast, you interview different people, you partner up with them to basically run it like a radio or kind of a syndicated, podcast spot, because you could take that same content, you could partner up potentially with other local outlets like that, that would help spread the word because you're the brand that they're seeing constantly. Now you combine that and you say, okay, I want to have guests on. Well, I want my guests to be real estate agents because anytime a moving company person, somebody who works for a moving company, goes to any networking event, they're trying to find the real estate agents, the title companies, the real estate brokers, the mortgage brokers. It's always the same people. So make those the guests because you just have this committed time, with that particular, person to get to know them. To have a great in-depth conversation. And then they get exposure through the podcast. They can put it out on their network and say, hey, I was just on. And then they see you as the moving company. That's the thing. If you look at any industry, there is probably a reason to use, that creating content through a podcast, then partnering with local, outlets essentially, because there's also news outlets and stuff that you can partner with, to put that content out there. But the connections you will make if you're bringing on guests, it's incredible. So you have multiple ways that you can monetize it because suddenly, that real estate agent knows you, and the next time they have a need, they built a relationship with you in that 30 minutes, hour, whatever, how long your podcast is. And the next time they have a need, you're the person they think of and they refer that business to. Now you've made money on your podcast.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. I kind of sometimes I wonder, if this, right now, we connected because I've got a podcast, you've got a show. And when we reached out, it just seems like accepted reason why we'd want to just sit down for an hour or so and talk about business and, have a conversation. Whereas if I didn't have a podcast and I approached you, it's like, hey, Mr. Cashmiller, you don't know me. I'm from Japan. And I just want to sit down and have a video call with you for about an hour of your time and just talk about your history, talk about the things you like and don't like and business and whatnot. Are you open to that? It's awkward. And the chances of, having a successful yes drastically drop rather than saying, hey, I've got a podcast where my listeners are probably going to be interested in what you've got to say and they're going to love to interview you for the show. And all of a sudden there's also a theme and a direction that you can shape the conversation around. And I think it's a great tool.
It really is. One of the shows that I run, it's called Emerging Brands, Franchises on the Rise, which I'm getting into potentially investing in some franchises I've got a couple I'm looking at. But the beauty is, so I bring on, guests in the franchise space. A lot of them are the founders of different franchises, and I've interviewed, 40 or 50 people at this point. The thing is it's so much easier, some of them have become clients, for different things. But when you reach out, the barrier to a response is so much lower. Because no matter what, even if you don't do anything with them, they're going to get some valuable content of their own. And that's why being guests on, different podcasts is also valuable, because, like I say, you get content that you can use with your audience. And, when I bring them on, I ask the questions, it's a straightforward format. I tell them, if I was to walk, they have like franchise shows where, you have the public can come in and they can see all these different franchises, talk to the people that represent them, see learn the business models, what's the investment to open a location. You get all sorts of franchises. You can have Subway there. You could have, some of the bigger restaurant chains, around, automotive, like you name it. So I tell people, I ask questions as if I had walked up to you at one of those booths and, I was interested in investing. And that's what I do, because the audience that we're trying, that we're building for that, they are looking for those opportunities. So I'm giving you a platform to be able to tell your story, why it's a good idea to invest, and that becomes so invaluable for them as guests, but also for us, because then we get to be known as, a podcast that focuses on those opportunities. And, frankly, if you go to a franchise show, you're going to see 50 or 100 concepts. There's 3,000 plus franchises in this country. There's a zillion of them you're never going to get exposure to, and so that's why you listen, so you build an audience there, and the listeners can find opportunities, and they'll say, hey, this show's about this. So they might not listen to all of them, but they'll find some that have interesting concepts and they want to learn more about that one. So tons of value in using podcasts to create content. So many ways to go about it.
I'd like to ask you about something that is kind of like cross-pollinating between what you were doing and what you are now, because when I Googled you, there was a lot about SEO that you came up for, SEO this, SEO that. And I think that's like the really early stages, that's what you're mainly focused on. Tell me how podcasting or having a show, how you can maximize the value of SEO with podcasts.
Well, some of it, okay, so with modern podcasting technology and stuff, transcripts matter. Okay. So with every episode,
which nowadays you can just get at this, snap of a finger. It's ridiculous
that's
how easy.
The beauty.
The old days, man. I had hired team to type out every word of 1 hour videos, and I was doing it myself. Like in the video editor typing it. It was nuts.
Now with like Premiere Pro and different programs and stuff, so it's like, okay, give me the transcript of the whole thing.
Boom.
And and here you go.
And a summary and bullet points and timestamps.
That's it. Yeah, that's what makes it beautiful, though, because every time you do that, think of it this way, like you go back to like the dictation and stuff. We find the programs and stuff. Because not everybody's a great writer, but if you can do a transcript, now you're not doing AI either to write all your content, because I don't know, that's going to shake itself out over time on because everybody's doing it, right? So there's tons of content. So when you do the podcast and you grab the transcripts, you've got the most original content you can ask for, and it's more like a story. And what you're doing is you don't even, from an SEO standpoint, you don't care whether anybody reads it, because you can take that content, you can have it tweaked a little bit, to include more keywords, based on what the content is, so that it has a better chance of ranking. And then, when they get there, they can go ahead and listen to the podcast, because so many podcasts, they can watch it, whatever, because, so many of them are video, or if they just want to listen on, their favorite player or whatever, but you can use that. So it's easy to generate the written content. You can use AI actually to a certain extent to optimize the content better. And then, you publish that, and that's going to help rank.
Do you think it's important to to make like a blog section on your website or something so that you can make articles with references to the podcast? I've seen some people do that, and I was considering it, and I just don't know if it's worth the extra effort to make a blog parallel to your podcast. What's your experience with that?
I think it's good to, especially if you're going to do guest spots and stuff, that if you have a blog, to throw it up on, like put your podcast in there. If you're already doing it, I think you should put it in there. It's definitely, you want to do it from a video standpoint too. Grab the YouTube embed, throw that on there, because, it's going to be constant. It's like I said, it's another great way of creating content continuously. So you might not have time for the blogs, but you can do.
Okay. Well, we got to wrap this up soon, but before we do, I'd love to hear from you. If any listener has come all the way here, there's obviously something about you, your story, that they loved. how can people get in touch with you, especially if they're looking to start a podcast and they want to work with someone in the US? What's the best way for them to reach you?
My email now is cash at Titan Media Worx with an X.com. Yeah, and so I can be reached there. And I'm also one of the easiest people to find on LinkedIn because I actually can like have my name. So it's like LinkedIn, I think /in/cash.Miller. Yeah, so it's like
that's cool.
Yeah, I don't have a bunch of numbers or anything assigned to my name.
Yeah, same here. I got my name, Ken Okazaki. That's it's not too much competition for that. So luckily, SEO for my name is easy. Guys, we're going to put the links down below to LinkedIn and his email into the show notes. If you're listening on the podcast, if you're on YouTube, go down to the description, click the links, check out Cash Miller. Cash, if there's any last words of advice you have for somebody who's either already creating content, but they're not doing it, it's not going anywhere, or they're thinking about starting, what would you say to that person?
Podcasts are the way to go now, honestly. Just because blogs are being blobbered, like in the digital marketing realm, people have a tendency to beat stuff to death. And that's what they've done with blogs. That's what they're doing it with AI, and that's going to be a problem. Podcasts are original. That is you. That's whatever you want to talk about. Have a guest. Be a guest. The podcasts to me are the way to go now. Because it's so much easier to create that content, and you're getting video, you're getting audio. You can turn it in a transcript, so you still have written versions. It makes it so much easier to create a lot of really good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook when they're thinking about the medium for creating content. What's the thing has the highest ease of completion if longevity is important for you? Like, you can run a sprint, but can you run a marathon, right? And with a podcast, it doesn't feel like a marathon. It feels like a walk in the park because it's regular. You meet new people. And I think that I could do this for 10 years and it's not going to feel like work.
Yep, I agree.
So that's something to consider. Thank you so much for being on the show, guys. Make sure that you check out his links. Also, I'll see you next week where we're going to bring on more interesting stories with entrepreneurs who are creating content and more tips on how you can leverage that to your business. I think the construction crew, they're like, hey, it's time to go. And that's our ending note there. Cash, thanks for being on the show. And everybody else, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed it a great deal.
No hustle, worship here, we're a different breed. Action is what we got if action is what you need. Content capitalists, we're breaking the mold. Cause the old ways fading, new stories to be told. So content capitalists, get to the prize.
This is the Content Capitalist Podcast, and my name is Ken Okazaki. There are as many ways to make money with content as there are people doing it. So listen in as my clients, past, present, and future, unpack how they crack the code to making $1 million a year or more while capitalizing on their content. Let's get started.